there's a good chance that of the last 10 bids you emailed, one more of them would have closed and signed with you if you didn't email it. And so in this video, I'll explain why you should stop emailing bids and start presenting your bids in person. Even if you feel like you don't have time to meet the person, and even if emailing bids is already working for you. And my argument is that in the end of the video, you will see for yourself that by stopping emailing your bids, you can save time, be more profitable, and on top of that, actually land more work. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with maybe the one that's like the most difficult to perhaps even think about. And that's the fact that you can save more time. So during the bid process, typically, let's make sure we're all on the same page on the bid process, is customer reaches out or a commercial client or somebody. They say they want some work done, and then you got to get the scope. Sometimes they send you a blueprint, or sometimes they might send you photos or whatever. And then from that scope of work, you put together your proposal, and then you give them the proposal. So I'm arguing that at the very least, you should present this in person at the final stage. At the final stage, you should present it. But I would even argue, even when understanding the scope of the project, unless like it's not even built yet and you got like the prints from the engineer, but most of the time you can visit the spot and take a look at it for yourself versus going off some photos or hearsay, that you should be in person. And here's why that will save you time. Number one, all revisions and details are done on the spot. I mean, the amount of back and forth that you're introducing to yourself in this process is obscene by not actually being there in person, bouncing ideas with the right individual. So think about it like this. From when you have the scope, you have to ask questions. What's included, what's not included? The details, how's this getting done? What material are we using there? Things can get pretty detailed pretty quickly. The timeline, when does it have to get done? The budget. You might say, well, some people just have budgets. Yeah, kind of. But like, let's say you're putting together like a $20,000 bid and they say that they don't have money. Well, if it's all being done through email, they might ask you to like take money off your profitability. But if you're actually in person, you can problem solve. You can say, hey, look, maybe to do this project that you asked me to, it's going to be 25 grand. But if your budget is 20 grand, then we can take this out, or we can use this type of material, or we can do it this way, where you're not losing money, but you can actually have a normal conversation. That's on the budget side. And then there's the revisions. Let's say you got the scope, details, timeline, budget, and now it's just about revisions. This last minute stuff becomes quite important to do properly. So you need to be able to have that conversation. And in person, one in-person 10-15 minute conversation is the equivalent of you going into your email, which, by the way, if your email looks anything like mine, is just constantly flooded with 1,000 different tasks and things I need to respond to. So you think about the clients on the other side. Typically, we're working with, either project managers that already have like a billion things to do, or homeowners who typically are successful to afford like a $20,000-$30,000 job, like project or job, probably have successful jobs. And so now all of a sudden you're asking them to respond quickly and to answer these questions and to problem solve all over email. And if you know anything about time management, one of the most important aspects is called batching. So like if your day looks like if you're on the tools, what's better? Being on the tools from 8 to 5, all at one shot, where all you're thinking about is completing the project, or being on the tools from 8 to 9, and then from 9 to 9:30 going to Home Depot, and then from 10 to 11 you're back on the tools, and then from 11 to 12 you do an estimate, and then from 12 to 1 you're back on the tools, and then from at 1:30 you have a quick 30-minute phone call. I mean, who actually gets stuff done? And so batching, the idea of that is doing things all at once. So when you're in the customer's house, or you're on the project, or you're like on a meeting with the architect, whatever, you can problem solve all in one like 30-minute chunk, versus these 5-minute increments throughout the rest of the day that it may not seem like you're saving time on this, but it's affecting your time on other things. So it's now, that's like a death by a thousand cuts. This is an example of that. Things that just kind of bleed all over. So by batching, that saves you a ridiculous amount of time. And the revisions, ridiculous amount of time. Because you're actually there and understanding what the heck they're talking about. Like, you can put together a first draft that is multiple times better and more reliable than putting together a draft completely blind. On top of that, something that you might be completely discounting is that being in person, this is where we talk about the second point, builds trust and respect. And trust and respect creates speed. I'll ask you this question. Who are you more likely to respond to quickly and give time to? Okay. Is it your best friend? Let's say your best friend reaches out, or somebody you've never talked to gives you a phone call and they're trying to pitch you something. Who are you more likely to carve time out of your day for? Yeah. So if you want this deal to actually not take 3 months to get figured out, and there's this constant follow-up, by actually being in person, you can build a good amount of trust and respect where they can get back to you and answer your questions in a day or two versus 1 or 2 weeks. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like when it's tax season, I have an amazing accountant. He sends me an email. It takes me like 2 weeks to respond to that guy. I feel bad for the fella, but like it takes like 2 weeks for me to respond to him. And that's like my taxes. So when you think about it, like from a different perspective, like with getting like a house project done that might cost thousands, you can see how people can push that stuff off. But if I met my accountant in person, or I had a one-on-one meeting, and he's like, okay, like here's when this stuff needs to get done. I'm gonna email you. Can you please respond? And I'm like, yes. That over email wouldn't have as much effect as me literally looking the guy in the eye, telling him, yeah, like, let's do this. Like, let's get this done. So that's the case there. So let's talk more about this respect and trust that you can earn. And ultimately, the reason you'd want that trust and respect, not because like we're going for that, but ultimately trust and respect lands you more work. So here's the story. A client of ours, he has an accent, a little bit self-conscious, great. I mean, he does incredible work. So he basically was emailing people because he feels like people don't understand them and that in person he might embarrass himself or it wouldn't be worth his time. Same thing I hear all the time with people that prefer to email bids. Now, remember, if it's word of mouth, you already have trust and respect. So that doesn't really fully count. We're talking about if somebody's reaching out to you who hasn't heard of you before and has not been referred in, most contractors I talk to maybe close like 2 out of 10, 1 out of 10. At most, I've seen like 5 out of 10. If it's somebody that's like, hears from you, there's that word of mouth, there's that connection that's built. I mean, you can close those 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. That's pretty typical. When you don't have that trust and respect built, like one of our clients, we'll call him Z, he would be closing like 2 out of 10 on those people that he's marketing to. After meeting them in person, despite all of potential insecurities he was having, he now was closing 6 out of 10. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen to you because, he works his butt off and, he's very coachable. But what I am saying is that even if you went from 2 out of 10 to 4 out of 10, what that can do is quite incredible for your overall profitability and efficiency of your business. Think about it. If you close 2 deals out of 10 bids that you submit, right, that's 20%. If all things stayed the same, for you to close 4 deals, all things stayed the same, for you to close 4 deals, you'd have to do 10 more bids. 10 more bids. That's like 10 more emails you got to send. That takes, again, back to that time example. But now, if you can close 4 out of 10, you would need half the amount of leads to get that same amount of work. That's pretty significant. And so there is a lot that can be discovered and a lot can be gained when you build that trust and respect. Now, how does trust and respect get built in person? It's quite simple. I mean, first of all, we need to get on the same page that contracting is all about relationships. I dug up this 2014 Harvard study that basically interviewed successful like remodelers in the US, and they asked them this, what do you think are one of the main drivers of your success? And basically they had this full conversation, and here's a direct quote from the study: remodeling is fundamentally a relationship driven industry. People do business with people, not pieces of paper. And so when you actually show up in person, you stand out. When you email a quote, here's what happens. You email the quote and they get this price. And now they also get all these other quotes that they've gotten emailed. So now the only thing they can compare you to is pricing and like what's included in this. Now, good luck comparing apples to apples from one guy to the other. Maybe you've been doing it 30 years. Other guy's only been doing it 30 days. But the homeowner doesn't know. They didn't get a chance to talk to you or talk to the other guy. You're just a number on a screen. You're just an email. And so all of a sudden, all your experience and reputation, all these intangible things that just can't be explained on a quote, gets completely diluted down to a price. So an email ultimately reduces you and your company to a PDF and a number, which you are not. So don't get forced to play on that one plane. If you email bids, then basically you reduce yourself and your company to just a number. So when you email the quote, the customer skips everything and goes right to the price. So ultimately, you want to stand out. And emailing the bid doesn't do that. When you're in person, there's things like body language. Body language is huge. Like there's just more trust built face to face. And so yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's like some number, but I think it's like 60%, 70% of communication isn't words you're saying. We've all heard that quote, right? And there's truth to it. I mean, who are you more likely to do business with? A guy that you've never seen or a guy you've had lunch with? Who are you most likely to do business with? The guy you've seen on TV 10 times or the guy that called you once? Like, why do you think people spend millions, billions of dollars on advertising their companies? Is because people trust what they see. It's why Google, Apple spend billions advertising and putting their face in front of your face so that when you're in the store and you're about to make a decision or you're online shopping, there's just this gut thing. That's because from an evolutionary perspective, that's just who we are. We trust other people. That's how we do business. And so when you're in person and doing all that, you also take them seriously. And when you take the customer seriously and their project seriously, they will take you seriously. It's just how we work. If somebody's nice to me, I'm nice to them. If you're nice to them, they will be nice to you. If you're serious about their project, they'll be serious about you. So people will hire the contractor that you take seriously as well. And really imagine for a second you went to the doctor and the doctor spent 5 minutes. You're like, hey, doc, I'm feeling bad. Help me out. Sits you down, puts his hand on your forehead, and he goes, honestly, take these pills. Come back to me next week if there's no problem. Here's a prescription. Like, how terrible would that be? Versus if you go to another doctor and they ask about your symptoms, they take your vitals, temperature, blood pressure, heart rate. They do a physical exam. They ask about your medical history. They do a proper diagnosis. They take your blood test, image scans, and then they formulate a diagnosis based on the information they've given you. And then they tell you about treatment options. And then they provide you education and guidance on which path to take. Like, which doctor are you most likely to like trust? Yeah, it's the person who's taken that time. So I do want to remind you, like, our job as contractors is to diagnose, just like the doctor would a person. We are diagnosing properties. And we're saying, hey, this is broken. Here's how you fix it. Or this is not built. Here's how you build it. And so by taking that time, kind of taking that like doctor approach, people really respect you. And so when they go let's say they get 10 quotes, whatever, some people are like that. They get like 5, 10 quotes. And if you've paid for Angie's leads, you've played this game as well. It's like everybody just kind of blends in. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be the price that matters. It's, some people, they all care about price. And in my personal opinion, that's just a customer that's not actually educated in what they're doing. They're just willing to take on unnecessary risk. We've all gotten the phone calls from clients that have passed on us saying, hey, come fix the problem that the other guy that was way cheaper than you made. Please, I made a mistake. So I think it's our job to educate the customer. And it's also our job to provide an amazing experience for the customer where they fully understand what's included, what's not included, what needs to get done, what doesn't need to get done, what decisions they should make, so that we can actually have them take on this project in the most intelligent manner. And so that's that trust and respect. That's how you land more work. People do business with people. And then ultimately, the last reason is that it increases your profitability and reputation. So the best way to solve a problem is to prevent it. There's a saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So what that means is, even if you land the job, let's say, congratulations, you put minimal effort, you wrote the bid, you land the job. Now you've basically, the bid and how it's designed, which by the way, you're responsible for, so is the customer's responsible for, now is missing some items. Now we're not starting on the best foot. So if being good in business, if your plan is to run a business for a long time, you're not just a fly-by-night guy trying to make a couple of bucks, then your goal should be, how can I get a 5-star review? And the easiest way to collect your profits and get a 5-star review is by setting the right expectations. So one of the things that I used to discount is that, yes, I got the job, hallelujah, it's done. I would completely neglect that the contract and the things we agreed to, if I would have spent more time, I would have prevented thousands of dollars of mistakes. And I would have been able to take what was a 4-star into a 5-star by just setting different expectations. And the only reason I would have set better expectations because I would have been able to hear that the customer was expecting something unrealistic. I mean, I've done a project where a lady genuinely believed that the wall should be perfectly flat. It was drywall. And she believed that after we've done some work and renovation and with painting it, that it should be perfectly smooth, just like tile would. It wouldn't be as reflective, but she was expecting it to be like a near perfect surface, like the glass on your iPhone screen. If I would have just done a good job of asking her questions and understanding and spent that time in person versus just obsessing about saving my time, and which is wrong, again, is not actually real, because the amount of time I had to spend to put out that fire was way more than if I would have just driven and spent the 30 minutes in person with her. If I would have just done that, I would have educated her, saying, hey, by the way, the wall is not supposed to look like that. Like, come look at some of these other walls. Here's what actual walls should look like. Here's what to expect. And so first impressions are everything. And the contract is the first impression. A contract is your promise to them. And if you are not clear on their expectations where they're at, and you're just making these promises, you can be in serious trouble. And so by meeting in person, you can clarify details, you can see things for yourself, you can gauge a vibe off the client. There's some crazy people out there that we've all have these like horror stories of working with clients. Like, don't watch this video with just the perspective of like, okay, how can I land more work? No, no, no. You should also be thinking about like, hey, how can I turn down some work? There's some jobs that I've seen potentially bankrupt people that I've worked with. And if they've just taken the time to meet them in person and presented it in person and had the person react to that information, they'd have been able to like completely find out this energy that is completely off. And so this is just kind of a couple of quick reasons. I can go way more in depth than this, but these are some reasons on why you should present this in person and present all of your bids in person. Now, the only person who might possibly be watching this that would say, Amber, I think this makes no sense, is like on the commercial side. Now, on the commercial side, civic work, like if you're doing work with the government and it's just bid and tender and it's just not possible, I will invite you to consider, even if you're not meeting them in person, get out of the email inbox. Make a phone call to the lead architect, the main project manager. Build an actual relationship. On the first day of the job, Take the time of making sure that everything in the contract is exactly what it looks like, and present it to them. If you get a small deposit or something, or they say, hey, yes, we'll hire you, don't celebrate. Like, go make sure all parties are on the same page on the timeline, when payments are supposed to be released, what it's supposed to look like, when different contractors are supposed to show up. It's these things that really, really, really matter. And ultimately, by building this relationship, you can continue to get more work in the future. I've seen actual clients of mine, their lives change by learning how to land one or two commercial works, commercial jobs, because they've taken the time to build those relationships. And so, yes, I truly believe that emailing bids is not efficient, and that you should start finding time, making time, and meet people and present your bids in person. It will save you time, have you land more work, and ultimately increase your profitability and reputation. So if you want to see more content like this, click subscribe. I've gotten a request of somebody saying, hey, Amber, I'm sold. I will present my bids in person, but how do I eliminate tire kickers? How do I do that? Great question. Subscribe. That's going to be one of the videos I will be releasing soon. So if you agree, click like. If you disagree, type in the comments. Let's have a discussion. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I appreciate you guys. Take care.